and 14 with 8:40 to go, down 11. You're saying I'm washing my hands of this whole thing. You're trying to get out of there, and that was awful. And he didn't use the run game at all. But I'll say this, Dan. When he had a clean pocket, he had a first down on the 50-yard line. He steps into it, has a linebacker on Goddard. Yeah. And like just how you said, hey, Wentz did something good. He should have completed a pass. The receiver dropped it. Bad outcome from a good play. He got a good outcome from a bad play, right? He winds up with a PI call because the linebacker is like trying to catch up to Goddard, and the ball was so underthrown, he winds up smacking into Goddard and gets a PI call. But, like, how do you have a clean pocket? You step up and you underthrow your wide-open tight end on a mismatch by that much? He does that all the time. So I think Peterson wants out, Wentz should be gone, and Roseman too.
Guys, things are not that complicated. The fact of the matter is Carson Wentz is having a very, very bad year. He looks absolutely awful. But he's only 28, and we saw greatness in him before. It is rare that you see greatness, and it evaporates so quickly at such a young age, and that's it. Now, there's one thing when you were great, but then you get old, and as a result, age and attrition coupled with your diminished and deficient skills take fold altogether. It's another thing entirely when you're young and you just regress and you slide and you're having an absolutely awful year. You can resurrect yourself. I will remind you that there was a guy by the name of Nick Foles who was 11-2, if I remember correctly, as a starter under Chip Kelly. Disappeared for years because he was contaminated by Jeff Fisher. Looked absolutely positively awful, so much so that he actually contemplated retirement, but then was asked to come and be a backup in Philadelphia and ended up taking over after Carson Wentz got hurt and won the Super Bowl. And as a result, the next year, Carson Wentz gets hurt again with a 5-6 record. Nick Foles comes in, saves the day, gets them to the postseason, and delivers a win against the top-seeded Chicago Bears in the Windy City before losing to New Orleans in a divisional playoff game. That Nick Foles all of a sudden ends up getting a huge contract from Jacksonville. When he goes to Chicago, we were all applauding it. We were saying if they got the offensive line together, he would look great. There have been a bevy of instances throughout NFL history where there's been a quarterback who wasn't finished, was still relatively young, had exhibited greatness in the past, but they had fallen off, and ultimately was able to correct themselves. Carson Wentz is 28, so I'm not giving up on him. I'm looking at Peterson, and it's not because of Peterson's inability to coach. It's because it appears he does not want to coach Carson Wentz. That was not his guy. That was not his choice. That's not the guy that he believes listens to what he wants done, how it wants done. And that marriage is the problem. Even though we could point to Howie Roseman drafting Jalen Hurts, I'll reiterate what I said earlier. This is the same Howie Roseman that took over after Chip Kelly was unceremoniously exiled. And Howie Roseman takes over, and he helps guide the Philadelphia Eagles to a Super Bowl. We don't look at them and say they have no talent on defense. They have no talent on offense. They don't have running backs. They don't have tight ends. They don't have a couple of wide receivers. We don't look at that. We look at health, and we look at the fact that Carson Wentz and Peterson are not aligned with one another. That is what has to be addressed.
Yeah. Let me hit on this too, Stephen. I think you make a lot of good points. I think the last two I would make is this. I think the point of greatness doesn't just go away like that is a valid one. I think we've seen Carson Wentz in two settings for the Eagles. We've seen him with a relatively talented team in 2017. He was one of the best quarterbacks in football. In his last 3 years, that roster has slowly depleted. And last year, what happened, it's important for everyone to understand, like last year, what happened with that football team and the decimation of injuries is not normal. The way that Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz carried that football team to the playoffs is not normal. And they're going through the same type of injury this year. We can't expect it to happen for the second straight year. And so I would caution everybody. Everyone thinks I'm this Carson Wentz apologist. What do you guys want me to do? You want me to come on television as ESPN pays me to do a job and just go, hey, this guy stinks? No, like my job is to continue to be why. 3 years ago, everyone says Ryan Tannehill stinks. He's a top 10 quarterback. A couple years ago, everyone said before they got Amari Cooper, Dak Prescott stinks. I think that's invalid. So just be very careful. Listen, great movies aren't made just because they're great movies. Shawshank Redemption is an awesome movie because it had a great writer, great director, awesome actors, and an incredible setting. It takes everybody. Carson Wentz, with a rebuilt roster and a coaching staff that instills his confidence back, mark my words, will be performing like a top 10 quarterback again quickly.
It's not just the confidence, Dan. Everything is messed up. And the key was when he said, this is the way we do it around here. He still doesn't believe that he's doing the
it needs to get rebuilt.
He needs to be reworked.
It needs someone who can rebuild it.
Because, yes, he needs to be rebuilt.
Yes.
By the way, he doesn't move the way he used to my eyes.
That's fair.
But he's tough as nails, and he has great talent. But everything is wrong, and there's no – Peterson's ain't going to fix this. I don't know if the Eagles are going to fix this. I don't know if it's fixable at this point.
All right, we got to go.
It's
Dan,
fixable.
Appreciate you. Always a good time. We'll talk secret this season. Philly's been struggling, just 3 wins on the year, and then obviously Carson Wentz as well. Dan Orlovsky back here with us. By the way, guys, I was just reading, the Eagles have the second most expensive roster in the NFL. That's unbelievable to me with this type of performance.
Yeah.
But Max, I'll start with you on this one. Did the Eagles need to clean house right now?
Yes, they do. It's obvious. I mean, when you say clean house, there are 3 guys you're talking about, right, in any organization. The GM, the coach, the quarterback. And I've been saying for a while now that thanks to Dan Orlovsky primarily in the media, but many media enablers and guys on the team, obviously maybe the owner, Wentz has been enabled. He's been enabled. And last year when he had a bad performance down the stretch, he was told he was having a great performance down the stretch. And that's why he makes comments at press conferences like this is just the way we do things around here. You know, his poor decision making and all that stuff. So Wentz, who needed to be benched weeks and weeks ago, as I suggested and had been suggesting for weeks, to be held accountable to the team, the way Donovan McNabb was, the season after the benching, took them to his 5th NFC championship game, which they almost won, right? Like, instead of doing something like that, they just continue to enable Wentz. It's too late now. He's too messed up. Wentz got to go. He's not good. He hasn't outplayed a single opponent statistically all season. Not one. He's always outplayed by the opposition every single game. His mechanics are bad. His decision-making's bad, et cetera, et cetera. Internal clock is bad. I've been over all of this. But Peterson was also awful. And the way Peterson was coaching, it seemed to me, he's like, I don't want any part of this. You go for it on 4th down in Seattle territory when you're down 11 instead of kicking a field goal there. And I'm all for being aggressive, but there's situational football. You don't use your running backs at all. Like, I understand not using your running backs on 1st down. It's predictable and this and that. But like, you have a competent running game. You don't go to it at all. Okay, Carson, you want to run your offense? Go ahead. Here, do your thing. 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. If Jalen Hurts comes in, pre-snap penalty, puts him in a hole, but he completes a 6-yard pass, which is more than twice the yards that Carson Wentz had picked up till that point. Immediately, Hurts comes out, Wentz comes in, screws things up again, right? What's that about? And then Roseman, not only the bad picks at wide out and missing the better guys and picking the worst guys, you know, I get that, but the drafting of the quarterback in the 2nd round, Roseman has not done a good job. Peterson has done a worse job. Wentz has done the worst job of all. I don't think this is fixable. You got to restart.
All right, Max, this is why I love coming on, because I can absolutely stomp on your arguments right away. Cleaning house, there needs to be some type of cleaning coming up. Okay, you can't go back to last year and say Carson Wentz had good numbers down the stretch because he was beating up on bad defenses and not give him any form of credit for that. But then use last night, because I watched the start of the show, use last night's fact that he was playing against the historically bad Seattle Seahawks defense and use it against him. Can't do either of those. Number 2, you can't say that Jalen Hurts threw a 6-yard completion and it was more than double that Carson Wentz had in that moment when the first pass of the game is dropped and the third pass of the game is dropped. So, like, argument's done. Now, there's a lot of points that I want to make to the situation of the Eagles. I'll focus on 3. Do you need to clean house? The question has to come from the top of the organization and their owner, Jeffrey Lurie. Who within that organization do you believe can make you great again? Is it Howie Roseman? Is it Doug Peterson? Is it Carson Wentz? Because if you believe that one of those 3, 2 of those 3, maybe all 3 don't or cannot be great again, then yes, it's time to clean house. That is not of my belief. I still believe the quarterback can be a great player. So the cleaning house thing has to be answered with who you think could be great again. Number two, there's a big difference between a quarterback playing bad and a bad quarterback. Again, these are not excuses. These are just factual reasons. The offensive line has had 22 offensive line combinations this year. That's the most in the NFL. Not an excuse. That is a reality of this football team. They lead the NFL in drops. Not an excuse. That's a reality of this football team. Only Joe Burrow has had to throw into more tight window throws. Not an excuse. That's a reality of the football team. And they've only drafted one Pro Bowler, Molly, to your point, since 2015, and that's the quarterback. So do we think that maybe there's bad play by multiple players on the team because it's just not that good of a football team? My third point would be this. Confidence is the most important thing in life. It's certainly the most important. And confidence in yourself, confidence in the people that are around you, and confidence in what you're trying to achieve. And so you have to ask yourself, do you think that Doug Peterson is the coach that can instill the confidence back into Carson Wentz to not miss tight ends down the seam, or to not be willing to take that shot downfield to Alshon Jeffrey, or to not pull the trigger to Rager 2 weeks ago against the Browns? Because if you don't think Doug Peterson's that guy, then yes, it's time to clean from the head coach. Or do you think that they've taken a player that some people, and Max, I know that you're one, thought that this guy was a Patrick Mahomes, a Deshaun Watson, a Matthew Stafford type of talent, and turned him into David Carr looking type of player right now? Because they need to instill that back in this kid. This organization right now has philosophical problems. They have schematic problems. They have systemic problems. They have evaluation problems.
Got a quarterback
and they have
problem.
practice problems. We can pin it all we want on the quarterback. Have fun with that. But I will tell you this, Max, for everything that I would say about the organization, listen, man, you and I have gone back and forth on this a lot. My daughter's 4 years old, 5 years old. Her name is Lennon. She had to do this project, right, where she had to find a bunch of L words because she's learning how to spell and, find out what letters are and sounds. So she had to do a bunch of L words. So she made this. And I said, you know what? I got to hold the L right now. So I had her make me an L. I'm going to give it to you this year, Max. Last year I had a huge